Hi, this is Alexis Desai, Senior Solutions Architect with WhereScape. Today, I will be covering the documentation feature within WhereScape RED, which is our data warehouse automation tool. How many projects have you been on where metadata capture and documentation tasks have been pushed out to the next release or sprint? Sometimes the documentation is incomplete, it's out of date, or it's entirely lacking. Does your IT team ever have to go on a wild goose chase trying to find documentation that's generated in disparate tools? So today I'm going to show you how WhereScape's built-in self-documenting feature can help to solve all of the above-mentioned issues. Presented here is the WhereScape developer interface. You can see here that I have connections selected. I have a data warehouse connection established, which is my target platform. I also have a couple of source connections. You can see that I've created some load tables. I also have some stage tables, some dimensions, and a fact table. So I've completed my development work and I'm ready to create some documentation. So I'm going to go to Docs. I'm going to say Create Documentation. I'm going to be prompted here to select where I'd like to store my documentation files. I'm going to store them locally, so I select a folder, and I'd like to call this WhereScape Demo. So here it's going to ask me if I have any links to any custom HTML pages, which I don't. It's going to ask me if I would like to include any file group usage, and I'll just leave that as is. And if I want to sort my columns in a specific order, so I'm going to sort them by column name. And I'm fine with including shadows on my diagrams, and everything else I'm going to leave as is, but I am going to limit the complexity of my diagrams to 5 levels. So I'll say OK. Now RED has created my documentation, so I can go back up to the toolbar and select Display Documentation, which will display the documentation within the RED tool. I can also display it in a web browser. So now you can see that the documentation has been generated. And here you can see we've used the WhereScape style sheet, which can be customized for your organization. We'll look at the user documentation. Here you'll see under all objects that I have a few objects that I've selected to be shown to my users. Let's take a look at the fact table I created. Here's the fact order detail. So we can see some metadata for this table. We have our description, a purpose for the table, the granularity, as well as the table definition. You can also see that the star schema was created dynamically. Here are the dimensions that are associated with our star schema. I can select any of these tables and be taken to the metadata for the specific table. So now let's take a look at the glossary and defaults. Our glossary is a list of all of the terms that are in our metadata repository, along with any comments or descriptions. We can also look at our object name defaults. So these are the prefixes and suffixes that are used for our various object types. Let's take a look at technical documentation. So we go back up to the top, select technical documentation. We'll expand this folder so you can see there's more objects in my technical documentation. So I can go here and I can take a look at my connections. Let's look at the data warehouse connection. You can see here that there's a lot of metadata for my connection. I can see my ODBC source, I can see the type of database, what my default load type is, and the schemas that I've defined, as well as any templates. I can also go and look at procedures, and this will show me the list of stored procedures that are in my repository. So now let's go look at the fact table that we looked at in the user documentation. So here's my fact table. You can see a little bit more information here. you can see there's an update procedure. We can also see that the type of table is a detail fact table. And here you have a list of things that you can select to look at. Let's look at the source diagram. So this will show us the lineage for our fact table. We have our fact order table that is coming from a stage table, which has two load tables as input, and then we have our sources from our Northwind database. If you look below here, you'll see that we have information on all of the indexes from this fact table. If we go back, we can select the procedures. If we select one of the procedures, we can take a look at the code that was used to generate this particular table. So as you can see, WhereScape RED can generate both technical and user documentation with just a click of a button. We ran this documentation on demand. However, you can also use the WhereScape scheduler to schedule the documentation at any frequency you like. So now let's go back to the builder and make a quick change and see how the documentation is impacted. So if I go to my fact table and I display my columns, I can see that I have this freight column that I no longer want to have in this table. So I will go ahead and delete the column. I will recreate my table. And now I'm going to just refresh my connection. And let's take a look at the fact table. So you can see now that the freight column is no longer in this table. So let's generate our documentation again. We'll create documentation. We'll call this documentation 2. And let's display. So I go to my all objects, my fact table, fact order detail. And now if you look at the table definition, you can see that I no longer have the freight field in this table. So you can see the self-documenting feature in WhereScape dynamically makes changes and allows you to show this to both your technical users as well as your business users. So in this video, I have covered the basics of WhereScape RED's self-documenting feature. In the coming weeks, there will be additional short videos highlighting other features and functionality available in WhereScape RED, so stay tuned. If you're interested in seeing a full demo, please go to our website and click on the red button which says Request a Demo in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Thank you and see you next time.